Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Today we will discuss about the science of macroeconomics. The table of content. First, we will discuss about the definition of macroeconomics. Second, we will discuss about basic macroeconomics concept. Next, we will discuss about macroeconomics models. And the last, we will discuss about macroeconomics policy. The definition of macroeconomics. Macroeconomics is the branch of economics that studies the behavior and performance of an economy as a whole. That meaning is a whole in here because macroeconomics studies economy-wide phenomena such as gross domestic product or GDP, unemployment rates, national income, price indexes, output, government consumption, inflation, saving, investment, and the last is import and export. Macroeconomics analyze all aggregate indicators and the microeconomics factors that influence the economy. And also, government and corporation use macroeconomics models to help in formulating of economic policies and strategies. Next is basic macroeconomics concept. Macroeconomics encompasses a variety of concepts and variables. But there are three central topics for macroeconomics research. The first is output and income. National output is the total amount of everything a country produces in a given period of time. Everything that is produced and sold generates an equal amount of income. Macroeconomics output is usually measured by gross domestic product or GDP. Gross domestic products is the total monetary or market value of all the finished goods and services produced within a country borders in a specific time period. As a broad measure of overall domestic production, it functions as a comprehensive scorecard of a given country's economic health. The next is unemployment. The amount of unemployment in an economy is measured by the unemployment rate. It's meaning the percentage of workers without jobs in the labor force. The unemployment rate in the labor force only includes workers actively looking for jobs. People who are retired, pursuing education, or discouraged from seeking work by a lack of job prospect are excluded. And the last is inflation and deflation. A general price increases across the entire economy is called inflation. When prices decrease, there is deflation. Economists measure this change in prices with price index. Inflation can occur when an economy becomes overheated or grows too quickly. Similarly, a declining economy can lead to deflation. Next, we will discuss about macroeconomic models. There are three main macroeconomics models. The first is aggregate demand and aggregate supply. These models show the price level and level of real output given the equilibrium in aggregate demand and aggregate supply. The AD and AS, the aggregate demand and aggregate supply diagram, can model a variety of macroeconomic phenomena, including inflation. The AD and AS model has become the standard textbook model for explaining the macroeconomy. The AS-AD diagram is also widely used as a pedagogical tool to model the effects of various macroeconomic policies. Change in the non-price level factors are determinant cause change in aggregate demand and shift of the entire aggregate demand curve. When demand for goods exceeds supply, there is an inflationary gap where demand pull inflation occurs and the AD curve shifts upward to a higher price level. When the economy faces higher cost push inflation occurs and the AS curve shifts upward to the higher price level. Next, we will discuss ESLM models. These models show what combination of interest rates and output will ensure equilibrium in both the goods and money markets. The ESLM models which stand for investment savings, (IS), and liquidity preference money supply, or LM. Keynesian macroeconomics model that show how the markets for economic goods, (ES), interact with the renewable funds market, or LM, or money market. It is represented as a graph in which the ES and LM curves intersect to show the short-run equilibrium between interest rate and the output. Then the last is growth model. The neoclassical growth model of Robert Solow has become a common textbook model for explaining economic growth in the long run. The Solow model assumes that labor and capital are used at constant rates without the fluctuation in employment and capital utilization commonly seen in business cycle. The neoclassical growth model of Robert Solow has become a common textbook model for explaining economic growth in the long run. Next, we will discuss about macroeconomic policy. There are two main macroeconomic policy. The first is fiscal policy and monetary policy. First, we will discuss about monetary policy. Monetary policy is a process undertaken by the monetary authority in controlling the money supply and cost of money to achieve economic stability. The monetary policy relies on the relationship between the rate of interest rate and the supply of money to influence economic growth, inflation, exchange rate, and unemployment. Monetary policies conduct through open market operations, buying and selling financial instruments, and setting the reserve requirement and the discount rate. Central bank serve as the lender of last resort to the banking sector. The central bank is normally the institution that manages the economic money supply, currency, and interest rate. It has control over the country monetary base and regulates the financial system through the operation of monetary policy. Monetary policy must certain challenge, notably dealing with the flexibility of the financial system to react and ensuring the timing and credibility of announcement. The success of this policy is depending on the success of the previously implemented monetary policies. As reputation is an important element in the implementation of a successful monetary policy. The success of this policy also depends on the effectiveness of the transmission mechanism and the independence of the central bank from the rest of government. But how in the monetary policy in the Islamic economic? To ensure that monetary growth is sufficient and not excessive, it is necessary to carefully monitor the three main sources of monetary expansion. Two of them are domestic. First, finance the government budget deficit by borrowing from the central bank. Second, the expansion of deposit through the creation of credit in commercial banks. Third, it is external, monetary surplus balance of payment abroad. Therefore, if monetary policies are to be less effective or too restrictive, there must be coordination between monetary and fiscal policy to realize national objective. This underscores the need for a non-inflationary and realistic fiscal policy in Muslim countries. That's Umar Chapra. Umar Chapra said to create an adequate monetary growth, climate in the sense of sufficient and not excessive, it is necessary to carefully monitor the three main sources of monetary. There are three main sources in the monetary that need to be monitored carefully. The first is fiscal deficit. Attempts by the government to extract real resources at the faster rate than is sustainable at a stable price level could lead to continually raising fiscal deficit and accelerated increases in money supply, thus contributing to inflation. Therefore, a conscientious Muslim government committed to the achievement of the goals of an Islamic economy should pursue a fiscal policy which is consistent with its goals. This doesn't necessarily roll out fiscal deficit, but imposes the constraint that deficit be allowed only to the extent necessary to achieve broad-based well-being within the framework of stable price. The second is commercial bank credit creation. Commercial bank deposits are an important part of money supply. As in is for analysis, this deposit can be divided into two parts. First, the primary deposit, which provides the banking system on a money basis, cash in bank plus deposit in the central bank. Secondly, is derivative deposit, which in a proportional reserve system represent the money created by commercial banks in the process of credit expansion and are the main source of monetary expansion in the economy with advanced banking habits. And the last is balance of payment surplus. Only a small percentage Muslim countries enjoy balance of payment surplus, while most of them experience deficit. Those who experience surplus, the surplus doesn't occur in the private sector and doesn't lead to an automatic expansion in money supply. This happens only because the government is financing the surplus by spending it dramatically, while the private sector balance of payment deficit doesn't replace this adequately. Next is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy uses the power of the government to tax and spend as means of influencing aggregate demand and the level of economic activity. Whenever there is a shock to the economy, these tools are used independently or in combination to stabilize the economy and nudge it toward a state of full employment and price stability. One problem is fiscal policy is a passive instrument and takes time to take effect. For example, it takes considerable time for fiscal expansion to have significant impact in the economy. And often, by the time it took effect to economy is already booming that you really don't need fiscal stimulus because instead of being good, it harms and overheat the economy instead. But zakat could be used as a counter-cyclical policy through discretionary and non-discretionary fiscal policy. Discretionary fiscal policy is carried out by varying the disbursement of zakat to the recipient. When the economy is in the downswing, to spur aggregate spending and economic activities, zakat could be act as complement taxation and government spending as tools of stabilization policy. Zakat could act as a countercyclical fiscal policy that could complement taxation and government expenditure as stabilization policy tools. If zakat can be used as one of the instruments of fiscal policy, it clearly expresses its relation to, first, as a means of redistribution of income and wealth. Because the concept of zakat is almost the same as transfer payment in a conventional economy, although there are many fundamental differences, either from a philosophical point of view, legal of problem, and the distribution of utilization case. Next is as an economic stabilizer. Good management of zakat can have an impact on economic stability. Economic conditions are sometimes in a booming situation and in situation of depression. This fluctuating condition certainly requires the existence of an instrument that becomes a stabilizer, so that the resulting infiltration can be minimized. And the last is as an instrument of development and empowerment of poor people or allocation function. Zakat has a very strategic role in community development. For developing countries, including Indonesia, economic development related to the real sector gets the highest priority. This is so that the unemployment and poverty rate can be reduced. The field and employment opportunities can be expanded. I think that's all that I can say from now. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.